Clockwork Orange. Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is Why the Fact Not coming to all of you with a brand new video. A Clockwork Orange is a 1971 dystopian crime film adapted, produced and directed by Stanley Kubrick, based on Anthony Burgess's 1962 novel of the same name. It employs disturbing, violent images to comment on psychiatry, juvenile delinquency, youth gangs, and other social, political, and economic subjects in a dystopian near-future Britain. Alex Malcolm McDowell, the central character, is a charismatic, antisocial delinquent whose interests include classical music, especially Beethoven, committing rape, theft, and ultra-violence. He leads a small gang of thugs: Pete, Michael Tarn, Georgie, James Marcus, and Dim Warren Clark, whom he calls his droogs, from the Russian word, which is friend, buddy. The film chronicles the horrific crime spree of his gang, his capture, and attempted rehabilitation via an experimental psychological conditioning technique, the Ludovico technique, promoted by the Minister of the Interior Anthony Sharp. Alex narrates most of the film in Nadsat, a fractured adolescent slang composed of Slavic languages, especially Russian, English, and Cockney rhyming slang. The film premiered in New York City on the 19th of December 1971, and was released in the United Kingdom on the 13th of January 1972. The film was met with polarized reviews from critics, and was controversial due to its depictions of graphic violence. After it was cited as having inspired copycat acts of violence, the film was withdrawn from British cinemas at Kubrick's behest, and it was also banned in several other countries. In the years following, the film underwent a critical re-evaluation and gained a cult following. It received several awards and nominations, including 4 nominations at the 44th Academy Awards, including Best Picture. In the British Film Institute's 2012 Sight and Sound polls of the world's greatest films, A Clockwork Orange was ranked 75th in the director's poll and 235th in the critics' poll. In 2020, the film was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress. In a futuristic Britain, Alex DeLarge is the leader of a gang of droogs: Georgie, Dim, and Pete. One night, after getting intoxicated on drug-laden milk plus, they engage in an evening of ultra-violence, which includes a fight with the rival gang. They drive to the country home of writer Frank Alexander and trick his wife into letting them inside. They beat Alexander to the point of crippling him, and Alex violently rapes Alexander's wife while singing "Singin' in the Rain." The next day, while truant from school, Alex is approached by his probation officer, Pierre Deltoid, who is aware of Alex's activities and cautions him. Alex's droogs express discontent with petty crime and want more equality and high-yield thefts, but Alex asserts his authority by attacking them. Later, Alex invades the home of a wealthy cat lady and bludgeons her with a phallic sculpture while his droogs remain outside. On hearing sirens, Alex tries to flee, but Din smashes a bottle in his face, stunning Alex and leaving him to be arrested. Deltoid brings word that the woman has died of her injuries, and Alex is convicted of murder and sentenced to 14 years in prison. 2 years into the sentence, Alex eagerly takes up an offer to be a test subject for the Minister of the Interior's new Ludovico technique, an experimental aversion therapy for rehabilitating criminals within 2 weeks. Alex is strapped to a chair, his eyes are clamped open, and he is injected with drugs. He is then forced to watch films of sex and violence, some of which are accompanied by the music of his favorite composer, Ludwig van Beethoven. Alex becomes nauseated by the films and, fearing the technique will make him sick upon hearing Beethoven, begs for an end to the treatment. 2 weeks later, the minister demonstrates Alex's rehabilitation to a gathering of officials. Alex is unable to fight back against an actor who taunts and attacks him and becomes ill, wanting sex with a topless woman. The prison chaplain complains that Alex has been robbed of his free will. The minister asserts that the Ludovico technique will cut crime and alleviate crowding in prisons. Alex is released from prison, only to find that the police have sold his possessions to provide compensation to his victims, and his parents have let out his room. Alex encounters an elderly vagrant whom he attacked years earlier, and the vagrant and his friends attack him. Alex is saved by 2 policemen but is shocked to find they are his former droogs Dim and Georgie. They drive him to the countryside, beat him, and nearly drown him before abandoning him. Alex barely makes it to the doorstep of a nearby home before collapsing. Alex wakes up to find himself in the home of Mr. Alexander, who is now using a wheelchair. Alexander does not recognize Alex from the previous attack, but knows of him and the Ludovico technique from the newspapers. He sees Alex as a political weapon and prepares to present him to his colleagues. While bathing, Alex breaks into singing in the rain, causing Alexander to realize that Alex was the person who assaulted his wife and him. With help from his colleagues, Alexander drugs Alex and locks him in an upstairs bedroom. He then plays Beethoven's Ninth Symphony loudly from the floor below. Unable to withstand the sickening pain, Alex attempts suicide by jumping out of the window. Alex survives the attempt and wakes up in hospital with multiple injuries. While being given a series of psychological tests, he finds that he no longer has aversions to violence and sex. The minister arrives and apologizes to Alex. He offers to take care of Alex and get him a job in return for his cooperation with his election campaign and public relations counter-offensive. As a sign of goodwill, the minister brings in a stereo system playing Beethoven's Ninth. Alex then contemplates violence and has vivid thoughts of having sex with a woman in front of an approving crowd. Thinking to himself, I was cured. Alright, morality. The film's central moral question is the definition of goodness and whether it makes sense to use aversion therapy to stop immoral behavior. Stanley Kubrick, writing in Saturday Review, described the film, a social satire dealing with the question of whether behavioral psychology and psychological conditioning are dangerous new weapons for a totalitarian government to use to impose vast controls on its citizens and turn them into little more than robots. Similarly, on the production's call sheet, Kubrick wrote, "It is a story of the dubious redemption of a teenage delinquent by condition reflex therapy. It is, at the same time, a running lecture on free will. After aversion therapy, Alex behaves like a good member of society, though not through choice. His goodness is involuntary. He has become the titular Clockwork Orange, organic on the outside, mechanical on the inside." After Alex has undergone the Ludovico technique, the chaplain criticizes his new attitude as false, arguing that true goodness must come from within. This leads to the theme of abusing liberties, personal, governmental, civil, by Alex, with two conflicting political forces, the government and the dissidents, both manipulating Alex purely for their own political ends. The story portrays the conservative and leftist parties as equally worthy of criticism. The writer Frank Alexander, a victim of Alex and his gang, wants revenge against Alex and sees him as a means of definitively turning the populace against the incumbent government and its new regime. He fears the new government and, in a telephone conversation, he says, recruiting brutal young roughs into the police, proposing debilitating and will-sapping techniques of conditioning. "Oh, we've seen it all before in other countries, the thin end of the wedge. Before we know where we are, we shall have the full apparatus of totalitarianism on the other side." The Minister of the Interior, the government, jails Mr. Alexander, the dissident intellectual, on the excuse of his endangering Alex the people, rather than the government's totalitarian regime, described by Mr. Alexander. It is unclear whether he has been harmed. However, the minister tells Alex that the writer has been denied the ability to write and produce subversive material that is critical of the incumbent government and meant to provoke political unrest. The film critiques the behaviorism or behavioral psychology propounded by psychologists John B. Watson and B. F. Skinner. Burgess disapproved of behaviorism, calling Skinner's book Beyond Freedom and Dignity 1971 one of the most dangerous books ever written. Although behaviorism's limitations were conceded by its principal founder, Watson, Skinner argued that behavior modification, specifically operant conditioning, learned behaviors via systematic reward and punishment techniques, rather than the classical Watsonian conditioning, is the key to an ideal society. The film's Ludovico technique is widely perceived as a parody of aversion therapy, which is a form of classical conditioning. Author Paul Duncan said, "Alex is the narrator, so we see everything from his point of view, including his mental images. The implication is that all of the images, both real and imagined, are part of Alex's fantasies." Psychiatrist Arne Stern, the former head of the MPA rating board, believed that Alex represents man in his natural state, the unconscious mind. Alex becomes civilized after receiving his Ludovico cure, and the sickness in the aftermath Stern considered to be the neurosis imposed by society. Kubrick told film critics Philip Strick and Penelope Houston, "Alex makes no attempt to deceive himself or the audience as to his total corruption or wickedness. He is the very personification of evil. On the other hand, he has winning qualities: his total candor, his wit, his intelligence, and his energy." These are attractive qualities, and ones, I might add, which he shares with Richard III. The society depicted in the film was perceived by some as communist, as Michelle Simond pointed out in an interview with Kubrick. Due to its slight ties to Russian culture, the teenage slang has a heavily Russian influence. As in the novel, Burgess explains the slang as being, in part, intended to draw a reader into the world of the book's characters and to prevent the book from becoming outdated. There is some evidence to suggest that the society is a socialist one, or perhaps a society evolving from a failed socialism into an authoritarian society. In the novel, streets have paintings of working men in the style of Russian socialist art, and the film shows a mural of socialist artwork with obscenities drawn on it. As Malcolm McDowell points out on the DVD commentary, Alex's residence was shot on failed municipal architecture, and the name Municipal Flat Block 18A, linear north alludes to socialist-style housing. When the new right-wing government takes power, the atmosphere is certainly more authoritarian than the anarchist air of the beginning. Kubrick's response to Simond's question remained ambiguous as to what kind of society it is. Kubrick asserted that the film held comparisons between both ends of the political spectrum and that there is little difference between the two. Kubrick stated, "The minister, played by Anthony Sharp, is clearly a figure of the right. The writer, Patrick McGee, is a lunatic of the left. They differ only in their dogma. Their means and ends are hardly distinguishable." Anthony Burgess sold the film rights of his novel for $500, equivalent to $4,500 in 2021, shortly after its publication in 1962. Originally, the film was projected to star the rock band The Rolling Stones, with the band's lead singer Mick Jagger expressing interest in playing the lead role of Alex, and British filmmaker Ken Russell attached to direct. However, this never came to fruition due to problems with the British Board of Film Classification, BBFC, and the rights ultimately fell to Kubrick. McDowell was chosen for the role of Alex after Kubrick saw him in the film If, 1968. When asking why he was picked for the role, Kubrick told him, "You can exude intelligence on the screen." He also helped Kubrick on the uniform of Alex's gang, when he showed Kubrick the cricket whites he had. Kubrick asked him to put the box, jockstrap, not under but on top of the costume. During the filming of the Ludovico technique scene, McDowell scratched a cornea and was temporarily blinded. The doctor standing next to him in the scene, dropping saline solution into Alex's forced open eyes, was a real physician present to prevent the actor's eyes from drying. McDowell also cracked some ribs filming the humiliation stage show. A unique special effect technique was used when Alex jumps out of the window in a suicide attempt, showing the camera approaching the ground from Alex's point of view. This effect was achieved by dropping a Newman Sinclair clockwork camera in a box, lens first, from the third story of the Chorus Hotel. And that is it, guys. This is the video A Clockwork Orange. Hope you all like this video, and please don't forget to smash that like button. And you're new to this channel, please hit that subscribe button, and also hit that notification bell so you will be updated on my next video upload. Mega love shout out tonight, Kuhn and my premier team, Team Blue Whale and Team Brilliant Star, and all its very active and supportive members. This is Why the Fact Not. See you all on my next video. Thank you for watching.